Welcome to the Artist Journal podcast by Northwind Illustrations. Glad you could make it to the studio today.
Really glad to have you all here.
Yeah, so today we're looking past the pretty to see how the work actually behaves.
Right, getting into the actual mechanics of the piece.
Exactly. Now, this is a video pod, so if you can keep the artwork in front of you, descriptions don't always do these details justice. I mean, it's hard to capture everything in words.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Though we will definitely do our best to paint the picture if you're just listening.
For sure. Oh, and want more? Check out the full library or join the inner circle at my newsletter over at nwin.substack.com. Glad you're here.
It's going to be a really great deep dive today.
It is. I mean, usually when we think about time, we picture something incredibly precise, right? Like an engineering tool.
Oh, absolutely.
You look down at your wrist, the digital numbers flip, and you just accept it. You're like, there it is. It's 8:15.
Yeah, it's entirely binary. We've basically built our entire civilization on the comfort of that visibility, categorizing existence into these neat, predictable little increments of seconds and minutes.
Right, but step into the messy reality of human perception, like into our actual lived experience, and that digital watch utterly shatters.
It really does.
We're looking at a landscape of time that is incredibly fluid. So today we are taking this really fascinating turn to explore a deeply personal written reflection by an artist.
And this reflection details the creation of an artwork titled Clopheads.
Which, I mean, that sounds like a surrealist concept right out of the gate.
It does, yeah, but the anchor here is actually something incredibly mundane.
Thank goodness, because we are not doing a dry art history lecture today.
No, definitely not. We're exploring how a totally standard, low-stakes conversation about, running late cracked open to reveal something much bigger.
A profound visual representation of how different human beings literally experience the speed of reality.
Yes. And like we mentioned earlier, since you might just be joining us on an audio journey today, you can't exactly look at the drawing the artist invites their audience to examine.
Right, if you're driving or walking, you can't see the screen.
Exactly. But we are going to vividly unpack the visual composition described in this reflection. We're going to build this piece right in your mind's eye.
Because to truly understand the mechanics of this art, we first have to, examine the inciting incident.
All right, this spark.
We have to look at the invisible friction of a simple morning routine.
Yeah, because the origin story of the piece doesn't happen in some, dramatic paint-splattered studio.
No, it happens in a hallway.
Right. Just a parent trying to get a child out the door. We can all picture the chaotic reality of this scene,
Oh, man. The shoes aren't tied. The backpack is somewhere on the floor.
The ticking is getting louder.
Exactly. But in the middle of this perfectly ordinary routine, the artist describes having a sudden, sharp realization.
A realization about a massive psychological divide.
Yeah. The artist noticed that they and their son weren't talking about time in the same way at all.
Not even close.
They were using the exact same vocabulary, standing in the exact same room, but conceptually. They were speaking two entirely different languages.
And the reflection isolates these two perspectives so beautifully, starting with the son. For the child, time felt open.
Open. I love it.
That's the perfect word because it implies a lack of boundaries. The artist observes that for the son, there was zero pressure.
Right.
No urgency at all. It was simply a continuous environment that, quote, kept going.
Wow.
Time wasn't a container he was trapped inside. It was just the water he was swimming through.
Which makes you wonder about the actual cognitive mechanism at play there, why does time feel so incredibly vast and open when we are young?
Well, a lot of it comes down to novelty.
Right, because kids are constantly absorbing new information. Their brains are frantically encoding entirely new data every single second.
Exactly. The texture of the shoelaces, the way the dust catches the light in the hallway.
Yeah, and because they are processing so much dense, novel information, time feels expansive. It physically stretches out.
But adults, on the other hand, we run on routine.
Oh, totally. We've tied our shoes 10,000 times.
Right, and our brains literally delete those routine actions from our perception to save cognitive energy.
Which is why an entire morning can feel like it vanished in 10 seconds.
Exactly. So for the parent in this narrative, time had what the artist calls weight.
The physical burden of time. I mean, the artist felt the acute demands of having things to do and places to be.
They sensed this relentless mechanical push.
Feeling that time was moving forward, whether they were ready for it or not.
And think about what the adult brain is actually doing in that hallway. It's the psychological concept called chronesthesia.
Chronesthesia, mental time travel, right?
Yes, exactly. While physically standing in the present moment looking at their kid, the parent is mentally already in the car.
Oh,
They are
man.
already anticipating the traffic, already feeling the stress of the 9 a.m. meeting, already carrying the fatigue of yesterday.
Okay, let's unpack this with an analogy, because it's like being in an airport.
Oh, I like that.
The adult is on the moving walkway. You're constantly checking the departure time on your ticket. You're feeling the physical pull of the destination.
Yes, the gate is calling.
Exactly. And you know the walkway is grinding you toward the gate, whether you walk or stand still.
Right.
Meanwhile, the child is just playing in the terminal. They are completely untethered from the clock, entirely fascinated by, like, the pattern on the carpet.
They aren't going anywhere in their mind.
No. So think about your own morning today. When you were rushing out the door, were you actually existing in your kitchen, or was your brain already 45 minutes in the future?
That friction is exactly what made this morning routine so jarring for the artist.
Oh, for sure.
The stress of the moving walkway colliding with the timelessness of the terminal is immense. And that invisible friction between the parent and child didn't simply dissipate after the door was finally locked.
No, it had to go somewhere. But that hallway realization is entirely invisible. You can't photograph the weight of time.
You can't.
To actually capture that temporal friction, the artist had to give it a physical body on paper.
And that's where the little clock heads come in.
Right. Looking at the description of the drawing, the artist puts these two figures right next to each other, sharing the same physical space.
But they explicitly state that the figures don't feel the same.
Yeah, the artist physicalizes the psychology of that morning.
We are told that one figure is smaller and feels lighter. That openness, the untethered kid in the airport, is translated right into the physical form on the page.
But the adult counterpart is described as feeling more aware and more grounded in something.
Right. And here is the brilliant misdirection in the piece. The artist points out that while the figures literally have clock forms for heads,
which is such a striking image.
It is, but the core meaning of the drawing isn't found in the clocks themselves. It's not about the literal image of a timepiece.
So it's not just, look, their heads are clocks, time is on their mind.
Exactly. The meaning is entirely in their posture. It's in the specific kinetic lines and weight distribution the artist uses to show how these figures hold themselves.
Okay, break that down for us.
Well, the smaller figure stands in a way that feels lighter, unburdened. The larger figure's posture, however, reveals they are fully aware of what time demands.
You can almost see the kinetic lines pulling them downward.
Yes.
Let's use another analogy here, because posture really is everything in this piece. It's the difference between walking with empty pockets versus carrying a massive, heavy rucksack.
That's a great way to picture it.
The adult is hauling around a rucksack packed to the brim with those past regrets and future anxieties we talked about earlier. The child's pockets are completely empty.
Right.
But, this description of the adult being more aware and more grounded, it really makes me pause.
How so?
Well, based on the heavy, demanding nature of adult time described in the first half of the text, the stress, the pushing forward whether you're ready or not, is it possible the adult is actually the one weighed down by an illusion?
Oh, wow. That is a fascinating shift in how we read the image.
Oh. Because are we praising the adult for being grounded when they're actually just trapped by a completely artificial construct of schedules and deadlines?
Right. They aren't grounded in reality. They're grounded in the schedule.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the lighter child, the one with empty pockets, might be the only one actually experiencing the present reality correctly.
I mean, questioning that power dynamic is entirely supported by the ambiguity of the piece. The artist recognizes the absolute burden of time.
Yeah.
The text explicitly says that both figures are carrying time. They both have these clock forms. The child isn't somehow immune to the existence of time, right?
Right. They aren't magic.
No, they just hold the weight of it differently.
The posture reveals the internal burden.
Exactly. The adult groundedness isn't some joyful spiritual enlightenment.
Yeah.
As you suggest, it's the gravity of their obligations pulling their center of gravity down into the dirt.
Yeah, dragging them down.
The awareness the artist mentions is the heavy, relentless awareness of a deadline.
Which is exhausting.
It is. And by stripping away the focus on the literal clocks and demanding we look at the physical toll of holding on to the future, the artist forces us to confront our own relationship with time.
And by looking so closely at how these two figures carry their clocks, The artist elevates this from, a sketch about a frustrating Tuesday morning
Right.
into a much larger philosophical truth.
The scope expands significantly. In the final section of the text, the artist zooms out to discuss the broader implications of the piece.
What do they land on?
They write that the drawing was ultimately about how time sits on us, and crucially, how it changes as we grow.
How time sits on us. Wow, that is such a visceral, mechanical image.
It really is.
It implies a tangible mass that physically rests upon your shoulders, like compressing your spine.
It frames the aging process not just as a biological reality, but as an accumulation of temporal weight.
Yeah.
As we grow, the open, continuous stream of childhood time slowly gets segmented, scheduled, and burdened with obligations.
That's true.
The way time sits on you at 7 years old is vastly different from how it sits on you at 40.
And we are actually seeing a societal acceleration of this, aren't we?
Oh, definitely.
We force kids out of open time and into heavy time earlier than ever before.
We really do.
We pack their days with rigorous schooling, structured extracurriculars, hyper-scheduled playdates. We're basically handing them that heavy rucksack when they are still practically toddlers.
We train them to watch the clock instead of the carpet.
Exactly.
Which brings us to perhaps the most profound realization in the text, the concept of temporal relativity.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, the artist reflects on the paradox that two people can stand in the exact same physical moment, sharing the same air, the same hallway, the same ticking second,
Yeah.
but experience it completely differently.
It shatters the comforting illusion of a shared reality. We inherently assume that because we are standing next to someone, we are in the same time.
Right.
But the text argues that temporal reality is entirely subjective.
It can be incredibly isolating to realize that the person standing right next to you is living in a different speed of reality.
Oh, for sure.
And the artist acknowledges how fleeting these moments of clarity usually are. Most everyday friction-like arguing over putting on winter boots or a brief clash about being late, it just evaporates.
It burns off in the rush of the day.
Exactly.
But the text notes a crucial exception. The artist writes that sometimes these incredibly brief moments leave a mark.
Yes.
And there is a defining phrase in the reflection that completely changes how we think about art. The artist writes that sometimes these moments stay, quote, not as memory, but as form.
And making that distinction between memory and form is vital. Memory is incredibly fragile.
It really is.
It fades, it distorts based on our mood. It's entirely internal and inaccessible to anyone else. But form is undeniable. It occupies physical space in the real world.
It makes me think of a fossil.
Oh, I like where this is going.
Imagine a dinosaur walking across a muddy riverbed millions of years ago, leaving a footprint. That action, that specific moment of a foot pressing into the mud, only took a fraction of a second. It was totally fleeting.
Right.
But the environmental conditions were just right. And that footprint hardens into solid rock. It becomes a permanent physical record of a temporary event.
That is a brilliant way to put it.
Thanks. I mean, that's exactly the mechanism of what the artist achieved here. Their fleeting frustration, that sudden, sharp chronesthesia in the hallway, hardened into the ink and paper of clockheads.
It really did.
It transformed from a subjective, fading memory into an objective, permanent form.
And if we look at the broader justification for why humans create art at all, this is it.
Yeah?
Art takes the invisible, crushing weight of human experience, things like the subjective speed of time or the invisible friction between generations, and gives it a shape.
It makes the invisible visible.
It gives it a physical posture that we can actually look at, point to, and finally understand.
So we started this deep dive looking at a completely mundane parent-child conversation. Just the chaotic rush of a standard morning routine with untied shoes and ticking clocks.
And we followed that thread into an artwork where the literal clocks are just a misdirection,
Right.
leading us to analyze the heavy, slumping kinetic lines of a body burdened by the future.
Which ultimately landed us on a massive philosophical realization about temporal relativity.
Yeah.
How time physicalizes itself as a weight on our shoulders, and how two people can exist in the exact same second but live in entirely different realities.
It really invites a moment of genuine self-reflection. I mean, think about your own posture right now, both physically and mentally.
Mm-hmm.
How does time feel to you in this exact moment?
Yeah.
Are you operating in an open, continuous environment, simply swimming through the present?
Or do you feel that heavy, forward-moving weight?
The strap of the rucksack digging into your shoulder, pulling you toward the next obligation.
The weight definitely accumulates as we move through life. Which leaves us with one final fascinating question to mull over.
What's that?
Well, if time sits on us differently as we grow, if it gathers mass and demands as we transition from the empty pockets of childhood into the grounded, heavy obligations of adulthood,
Yeah.
what happens in the final chapters of life?
Oh.
Does the weight of time eventually become too crushing to carry? Or, when the schedules finally fade and the demands quiet down, do we somehow shed those heavy rucksacks and return to the lighter, open, continuous time of childhood?
That's a beautiful thought. Do we end exactly where we began?
Something to think about the next time you glance down at your watch. Keep questioning those everyday moments in your own lives. You never know which ones are going to leave a mark.
Take care, everyone.
See you next time.